What if I told you that um, up to like 90% of the thoughts you are having today are actively trying to make you miserable?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, no terrible boss, no insane traffic jam, no broken appliance to blame, just your own mind operating as this like relentless sabotage machine.
Right. Which sounds a bit intense when you say it like that, but we're looking at a stack of sources today for this deep dive that frame this self-inflicted misery not as a personality flaw, but really as a mechanical glitch in how we process reality.
A total glitch.
Yeah.
Because we generally operate under the assumption that, our life circumstances are our biggest hurdles.
Hmm.
But the text makes this profound argument that our actual greatest challenge is our own mind.
Hmm.
Specifically, its inability to tell the difference between what is actually happening and its own interpretation of what's happening.
Exactly. And the mission for us today is to really unpack this relationship between the ego, our unconscious thought patterns, and this huge trap of complaining. And the sources use this incredibly relatable example to illustrate the glitch. It's what the text calls the rainy day illusion.
Yes, the rainy day. I love this example because it perfectly encapsulates that fundamental error we all make. Like, we constantly mix up reality with our mental commentary, and we experience them as like one single fused phenomenon.
We really do.
So picture this. You wake up in the morning, you walk over, pull back the curtains, and see that it is raining outside. And almost as a reflex, you just groan and think, oh no, not another rainy day, another miserable day.
Which is such a universal reaction,
Right.
right? But in that split second at the window, you have mixed up the raw data with an interpretation completely without knowing it.
Without even a second thought.
Right, because the actual physical reality is simply water falling from the sky. I mean, there's nothing inherently miserable about condensation falling from a cloud.
Yeah, it's just weather.
It is a completely neutral meteorological event. Your mind supplies the miserable label entirely on its own.
It's almost like we're walking around wearing a pair of augmented reality headsets. Or, like a social media filter.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, because reality is just the raw data of the water falling. But our mind's software automatically slaps this gloomy, miserable filter over our field of vision. And we've been wearing the headset for so long that we forget the filter is even there.
We assume the world is actually colored that way,
Exactly.
and we mistake the filter for the world itself. But the reason this matters, according to the text, is that when we apply that filter, we actively reject the present moment.
Mm.
We start arguing with reality, basically asserting that this specific weather pattern shouldn't be happening.
But you cannot win an argument with the weather. I mean, the rain is already here.
Right, the rain doesn't care. And by rejecting the present moment, you generate friction, you generate suffering. Instead of allowing the challenge to just be there, and using it as an opportunity to become more present,
Right.
you basically throw a mental tantrum.
A mental tantrum.
Yes. The text argues that the ultimate challenge of our lives always manifests right now, in the present moment. But we miss it because we're too busy fighting our interpretation of it.
Okay, so if slapping this miserable filter on everything just makes us unhappy and creates all this useless friction, the obvious question is, why is the human brain wired to do this? Like,
Mm.
we seem to have this automatic reflex to complain.
Well, this brings us to a frankly staggering statistic presented in the text. For many people, 80 to 90% of their thinking is purely ego-serving.
90%. That's wild.
It is. And crucially, this thinking is problem-making, not problem-solving. It's just an engine that generates issues where none actually need to exist.
Okay, wait. I need to challenge this definition of the ego for a second, because when I hear the word ego, I think of vanity.
Yeah.
Right.
Arrogance, yeah.
Yeah, I think of someone wanting to be the smartest person in the room, wanting to win, wanting to look good. But if I'm standing at the window complaining about the rain, or like I'm stuck in traffic whining about my commute, I feel like a powerless victim. How on earth does playing the grumpy victim serve my ego?
That paradox trips so many people up because we do assume the ego only wants to feel superior in a boastful way. But the ego's actual primary goal is simply to ensure its own survival.
Okay.
It desperately wants to feel separate, solid, and defined. And one of the fastest, easiest ways to create a strong sense of a separate self, like a fictitious identity, is through opposition.
Oh, I see. Creating an identity by pushing against something else.
Exactly. The text reveals this hidden mechanism of complaining. It always operates in the unconscious assumption that you're right and the other person, the situation, or the weather is wrong.
So it sets up a dynamic of I am the reasonable person who deserves sunshine,
Yeah.
and the universe is morally wrong for raining on me.
Yes. When you complain, you instantly take the moral high ground. You're right, the traffic is wrong. You're right, your spouse is wrong. And that dynamic artificially inflates and strengthens the ego by giving it a really clear, rigid boundary.
Because it tells you who you are in that moment.
Precisely. The ego loves a grievance because a grievance tells you exactly who you are. You are the righteous victim who has been wronged by the world. It keeps that fictitious self alive.
Wow. So it's not even about wanting to fix the problem. The complaining itself is the objective, because it feeds that sense of me against the world.
Right. It provides a strange sort of psychological safety for the ego. But the text makes a vital distinction here, which is important. We need to clearly separate useless complaining from, like, pointing out a factual wrong that can actually be rectified.
Right, because if someone serves me a raw piece of chicken at a restaurant, I shouldn't just try to accept it as the beautiful reality of the universe.
Definitely not. No. The texts explicitly say this isn't about ignoring things that are wrong and can be fixed. Like, if the soup is cold, you can tell the waiter, excuse me, this soup is cold.
Yeah.
That is a factual observation aimed at a practical solution.
Just addressing the raw data of what is happening.
Exactly. Useless complaining, the kind that makes up that 90% of our egoic thinking, has no practical purpose. It sounds more like, how dare they serve me cold soup?
Oh, yeah.
This always happens to me. This restaurant has terrible service. They probably did this on purpose just to annoy me.
Right, and that internal monologue doesn't heat up the soup. It just inflates the ego.
Not one bit.
It's applying the AR filter again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The raw data is simply that the soup is cold. But the ego adds the filter of this being like a personal insult to my very existence.
Yep. And if up to 90% of our thoughts are running this covert ego inflation program, catching the habit requires immense alertness. Because, as the text notes, it is incredibly easy to spot unconscious complaining in other people.
Oh, so easy. We look at a coworker and think, wow, they are so negative and complain constantly. But when we do the exact same thing, we feel like we're just stating the obvious objective truth of the universe.
Exactly. We're completely blind to it. And the texts actually highlight this sobering observation about Buddhist monks that illustrates just how deeply wired this habit is.
I found this part so fascinating because you picture these individuals who have dedicated their entire lives to spiritual practice, mindfulness and just being present.
Right, the ultimate Zen masters.
Yeah. But the author observed that even these monks and nuns in the monasteries would periodically get completely taken over by unconscious thinking. Like they would start complaining about the monastery.
They fall into the exact same human trap, just with different scenery.
Exactly. And the details in the text show they aren't complaining about, like, abstract spiritual concepts. They complain about having to get up at 4:30 in the morning. They complain about washing their hands in freezing cold water.
Typical roommate stuff, almost. Seriously. They're annoyed, they aren't allowed to wear warmer clothes, and they grumble about how incredibly long the meditation sessions are.
Which really demonstrates the relentless nature of the ego. I mean, you can put it in an environment designed to strip away modern stressors, and the ego will simply find a new surface to push against.
It'll just complain about the meditation.
Right. It'll look at a long meditation session and aggressively assert that it shouldn't be happening.
But what's really cool is how they handle it. Because they have strict rules of decorum, a monk cannot just tell a complaining Kier to shut up and stop whining.
No, and telling someone to shut up would just feed into a new ego conflict anyway, creating another layer of opposition and grievance.
Right. So instead, they use this incredibly polite, highly effective pointer. They look at the complaining person and say, just 3 words, watch your mind.
Watch your mind. It functions as such a profound intervention. It acts as a total circuit breaker. Like, you're lost in this stream of grumbling about the cold water in the early hours, and someone says, watch your mind. And suddenly, you aren't the person complaining anymore. You become the person observing the mind complaining.
And that is the exact mechanism of why it works. It creates psychological distance. When we talk about becoming the awareness behind the thought, it can sound like this abstract spiritual jargon.
Yes, totally.
But from a cognitive perspective, we are actually talking about metacognition.
The ability to think about your own thinking.
Exactly. When you are lost in a complaint, the brain's default mode network is just running on autopilot. When someone says, watch your mind, they are literally prompting your prefrontal cortex to step in and observe the process.
It forces you to take the AR headset off and look at it in your hands, rather than looking blindly through it.
Beautifully put, yeah. And the texts point out that when you do this, when you pull back and bring in more presence, your mind functions significantly better when you actually need it. You stop wasting cognitive processing power on generating all that useless friction.
Okay, so this shifts our focus directly to the listener. How do you apply this monastic circuit breaker to a normal daily grind?
Right.
Because most of us are dealing with commutes, difficult clients, and like overflowing inboxes, not 4:30 a.m. meditation sessions.
Well, the text defines this shift as moving from unconscious living to conscious living. Conscious living is presented as an essential part of the awakening process. The formula is fairly straightforward, though not easy. It requires you to identify the complaining thought, let go of it, and drop it.
Just drop it.
Just drop it. You face the facts of the situation without denying them. And from there, you really only have two valid options. You either act upon those facts to change them, or you leave them alone and completely accept them.
I mean, if it were as easy as just dropping a thought, we wouldn't all be walking around so stressed out. How do you actually let go when you're fuming? Like if someone cuts me off in traffic, my heart rate spikes, I'm angry, and I desperately want to complain. I can't just flip a switch and drop it.
No, it's definitely not a magical switch, and it does require a lot of practice. Dropping a thought involves actively interrupting the cognitive loop. So when that person cuts you off, your mind immediately starts generating a narrative, right? Like they are a terrible driver, they have no respect, they almost caused a crash.
Right, the whole
To
story.
drop it, you have to redirect your focus away from the narrative and back to physical reality.
Redirecting focus away from the story I'm telling myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
You focus on the somatic experience. You notice that your grip on the steering wheel is incredibly tight. You notice your jaw is clenched. You take a breath and focus on the sensation of the air moving in and out. By anchoring your attention to physical reality, the actual what is of the present moment, you basically starve the ego's narrative of the energy it needs to keep spinning. The anger might linger for a minute as a purely physiological response, but the mental complaining stops.
So going back to the soup, if the soup is cold, you act upon it and send it back. But if it's raining, you can't act upon the weather, so you accept it. You put on a raincoat. You don't stand in the rain complaining about how wet you are.
Exactly. The complaining is the unconscious middle ground where you are neither acting nor accepting. You are simply suffering.
Okay, so I want to lay down the specific challenge that the text offers for the listener. This is something for you to try today. Sometime after this deep dive ends, try to spend the next hour or two completely, 100% free of complaining.
And fair warning, it will likely be much, much harder than you anticipate.
Absolutely. The text actually lists the specific targets you have to watch out for. So for the next 2 hours, do not complain about the traffic. Do not complain about other drivers. Do not complain about your spouse, your ex-partner, your boss, or literally whatever situation you currently find yourself in.
Just let it be.
Yeah. When the urge arises, you observe the itch, but you do not scratch it. Watch your mind.
And as you attempt this challenge, I think it's important to address a very common fear that trips people up. Many people subconsciously believe that if they stop complaining, they will become passive.
Oh, like they'll lose their edge.
Exactly. They assume that anger and complaining are the necessary fuel for getting things done, and without them, they'll just become a doormat.
The fear is that if I don't complain about the things that are wrong, I won't be able to defend myself or fix the problems.
Right. But the text reassures us that this is a complete illusion. Your ability to deal with situations does not diminish if you stop complaining about them. It's actually the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah, because complaining consumes massive amounts of cognitive and emotional energy. When you drop it, you free up those resources. You can truly deal with the situation because you are finally facing the facts as they are, completely without the distorting filter of the ego's outrage.
So, like, if you're standing in a burning building, you don't stand there complaining, who left the stove on? This is typical of my roommate. I have the worst luck with housing.
No, of course not.
You face the fact that the building is on fire and you act. You run out. The complaining would just waste precious time and cloud your judgment.
Action requires clarity. Complaining clouds your vision by inserting this fictitious narrative between you and the reality of the situation.
Wow. Okay, so let's briefly recap the journey we've taken through these sources today. We started by looking out the window at the rain, realizing that the water falling from the sky is just reality. But the miserable label is a filter slapped on by our own minds. And we explored how the human ego actually thrives on that misery, because pointing out how the world is wrong makes the ego feel solid, self-righteous and separate.
And we saw that this trap is so deeply wired into the human operating system that even Buddhist monks washing their hands in freezing water get caught in it.
Which makes me feel a little better about my traffic complaints, honestly.
Right. But they use that incredibly simple circuit breaker of telling each other to watch your mind, which forces the brain into a state of metacognition.
And so we have the 2-hour challenge. For the next 2 hours, you're going to try to just face facts, either fix them or accept them, without letting the complaint machine boot up. You notice the urge, you ground yourself in physical reality, and you drop the narrative.
It really is a profound shift in perspective. You're moving from a mindset of friction to a mindset of function.
I love that. To close us out today, there's a final thought to mull over that builds on this entire framework.
Yeah, so if the text is right and your mind currently spends up to 90% of its energy unconsciously making up problems just to keep your ego feeling important, imagine the sheer volume of mental bandwidth that is being wasted every single day.
It's staggering to think about.
It is. If you can learn to step back, watch your mind, and take off that miserable filter, you get all of that energy back. So the question for you to explore on your own is what incredible, creative, or deeply fulfilling things you could accomplish with all that reclaimed mental bandwidth once you finally figure out how to turn the complaint machine off.
It makes you realize how heavy that augmented reality headset really is. It might just be time to try taking it off for a while. Good luck with the 2-hour challenge, everyone. Watch your mind out there.